Find yourself a comfortable seat on a mat or somewhere on the ground, somewhere that you can lie down, sit up, and move around a little bit. I will be guiding us through 11 to 13 poses tonight. And so we will spend time in yin classes that I teach. I prefer to spend extra time in poses that maybe are familiar to those who've taken vinyasa classes before. So we will be in poses for about 3 to 5 minutes sometimes. And so if you have props that you want to use around you, have them available. And I'll offer as many modifications as I can think of and things like that. And so have everything that you need, get yourself comfortable. And we're just going to spend about 5 minutes here at the beginning, arriving and getting into our bodies and just getting to this space before we move around and take time together on our mats. And so the theme today that I came up with was just the theme of self-awareness. And so I also like to use a card deck called the Animal Spirit from a woman named Kim Kranz, and kind of pull an animal card out sometimes when I teach classes and see just if there's anything from that resonates. As you find yourself seated or lying down, if that's more comfortable for you, go ahead and begin to pay attention to your breath and bring awareness to just how it feels as you inhale through your nose, not asking anything to change, and how it feels as you exhale through your nose. And do that for a couple breaths. And maybe as you begin to invite some more awareness into your breath, you begin to notice that you feel your body expanding, taking up some space. Maybe your rib cage or your belly expand. And maybe as you exhale out your nose, you notice that your shoulders drop a little bit. If you don't notice that, I invite you to consciously try and inhale as deeply as you can through your nose and see if you can expand your body. And if you are doing that consciously for the first time today, you might want to take a few exhales out your mouth and see if as you do that, making it more of a sigh, you can just let your shoulders drop away from your ears a little bit. Depending upon the types of things we do with our time, we can sometimes find ourselves becoming completely unaware of the ways in which our day impacts our body. And so coming back to our breath can just invite us to return to that awareness through something we do throughout the day unconsciously, which is breathing. And just continue breathing inhale and out through your nose after you've taken a few sighs if you need them. And I'm going to read from the guidebook that came along with these cards about the camel. And it says, the camel can handle absolutely anything, as it carries a wealth of nourishment within. This wondrous creature is self-reliant and handles challenge with ease. Even in the face of excess heat, such as judgment or anger, the camel can search inside the cool elixir of water to calm the situation. The camel represents the ultimate form of bringing the opposites into balance, such as fire and water, and being responsible for one's own reactions. The camel is a wonderful traveler and is especially fond of trips to faraway lands. And with this, it discusses 3 different elements of when you're feeling pretty in balance. If you resonate with the camel energy, you might feel calm, content, or have even a sparkle in your eye. But if you're feeling a little bit out of balance, you might notice yourself feeling dehydrated or lacking vitality. And so if you're feeling a little bit out of balance, a pilgrimage can be a great way, according to this, to kind of create some more balance. And not all of us are able to travel to faraway lands or even interested in doing such a thing. But I find that spending a little bit of time, whether that be 15 minutes or maybe a longer amount of time on a mat, can feel like a pilgrimage back to ourselves. So today, as we guide ourselves through these poses using our breath and our body, I encourage you to think of this time as a pilgrimage back to yourself, and ask yourself, in which ways are you lacking balance? And in which ways do you find yourself dehydrated? That can mean literally, in which I encourage everyone to always make sure you're drinking enough water, and struggle with that daily myself. Or it might mean that you have taken a break from things you know that are good for you and are noticing the way that shows up for you. So continue breathing seeing if you can deepen your breath even more than you already have, expand yourself, take up space, and take up this time for you. This is your time with your body and your space that you've taken away from everything else in your life, and use this time to just come back to yourself. Remembering this is always available to you. And as we go through poses that might feel extra sensational, I encourage you to notice the difference between sensation and discomfort and pain, and don't cross into that pain section. Yin classes with me can often push us to a place of discomfort or extreme sensation, but I never want anyone to experience pain. And so if you know that what you're experiencing is pain, please change what you're doing, adjust your body in such a way, and feel free to connect and ask for modifications afterwards. But never, when I mean push yourself, I don't mean hurt yourself. So please keep that in mind and take what you need. And so before we move into our first posture together, I want us to just stretch out our neck a little bit. So keeping your eyes closed if you'd like, take an inhale breath, sit up as tall as you can, maybe rolling your shoulders up and back, opening up your chest a little bit. And then on an exhale breath, drop your right ear towards your right shoulder. And depending upon your neck and your body today, you might want to look down at your shoulder or up at the ceiling and see if that adds anything else for you. But just spend 3 breaths here, noticing what it feels like on the left side of your neck. Seeing if you can try and keep that left shoulder down instead of the inclination to bring it up towards your ear. And then after you finish that breath, if you've been looking down or up, come back to a neutral stance with your head and inhale your head back up to center. Pausing for just a breath here. Maybe you want to look up to the ceiling and open up the front of your throat. And then coming back to neutral, take an inhale breath. And on the exhale, drop your left ear to your left shoulder, looking down or up, depending on what you want. Eyes open or closed. Take one more breath and then come back up to neutral. This time, inhaling and rolling our shoulders back and forward instead of up and back, noticing if that feels different. And then just drop your head down so that you tuck your chin to your chest for just a moment. Notice how this changes your breath, constricting it a little bit, but notice what it feels like to stretch out the back of our neck intentionally. Many of us may spend our time looking down at a screen or down at a book or just down at other things, but never intentionally stretching the back of our neck. So notice what this feels like. And remember that you can always do these things anytime you need a break throughout your day. Come back up to neutral on an inhale. Maybe flutter your eyes open if you've had them closed, or feel free to keep them closed throughout the class if that's what helps you stay focused. The first pose that we're going to move into is going to be wide-legged child's pose tonight. And so wherever you are, go ahead and come onto your hands and your knees. I like to keep a blanket on the center of my mat beneath my knees, just because it's more comfortable for me and helps me really set the space. But it's not a requirement if you don't need that. Come onto your hands and your knees underneath your hips, hands underneath your shoulders. And before we move into this, we'll just open up our spine, wake it up, let it know we're about to move around a little bit, and do a couple cat-cows. So on your inhale breath, go ahead and drop your belly down and look up to the sky or the ceiling, arching your spine in this way, bending your back in this way. And then on an exhale, press into the floor. Round your spine like you're a cat. Do this twice more on your own, using your breath to guide you through this movement. And know that this is always an optional transition pose between the poses that we'll practice. I might cue us through a different one, but whatever you need between postures is your choice of transition. So always feel free to make your own choices. Just be aware of what you need and take it. And coming back to neutral, we'll bring our big toes together and widen our knees to maybe about the width of our mat. And then just set your hips back towards your heels, coming down, bringing your chest between your knees, between your thighs, into a wide-legged child's pose. Maybe your chest and your heart can reach all the way to the mat. Reaching your hands out in front of you, palms flat on the mat. And see if you can bring your forehead to the mat and feel that space between your eyebrows just rest solidly on the ground. Maybe you'd like to roll your head back and forth if you're noticing any tension in your brow. See if that helps release it. But at the start of each posture, I'll encourage you to take a big inhale and come back to that sensation of expansion, taking up space, using your breath to fill yourself up. And then sigh out with an open mouth or out your nose if you prefer, and just see if you can let something soften. And then come back to that inhale and exhale through your nose, continuing to breathe in this way as we stretch out both of our side bodies, all of our spine, and also feel a sense of compression in our hips. And I mentioned that the theme or focus of today was around just a sense of self-awareness. And revisiting that a little bit more, I want to encourage you to just think for yourself, what over the last 6 months to maybe a year or longer have you learned about yourself? What new things have you chosen or needed to try to persist through any of the waves that life has brought you? And what have you learned about yourself in that process? And how can you take that knowledge of who you are, what works well for you, where you want to go, and what doesn't work well for you into the next 6 months of your life? And maybe if you don't want to look that far into the future, how can you take that knowledge into tomorrow? Something that you know and you've learned about yourself that keeps you calm, nurtured, and feeling fulfilled enough to make it through the day. And how can you take that into tomorrow and keep yourself grounded? Always coming back to your breath if you lose focus. You'll be counting the inhales to the count of 4, and the exhales to maybe a count a second or so longer, so 5 or 6. Seeing what this does to calm your mind and calm your body and calm your nervous system, because it's all connected. On your next breath, see if you can make sure that your hands are planted firmly on the mat, grip onto the mat, and then begin to, on an inhale breath, bring yourself back up, lifting your hips back up, bringing your knees back underneath your hips, hands back under your shoulders, and flow through a cat-cow or two, or just remain in stillness before we move into our next posture. And the next pose that we'll move into is the most sensational pose of yin, in my opinion, and it's toes pose. And so to get to this posture, all you'll need to do is just walk your knees forward, knees together, and then sit your hips back onto your heels so that all 10 toes are tucked underneath you. Your hips are going back towards your heels. And you can make a lot of different choices in this posture, because this is one of those ones that really helps us learn the difference between discomfort, sensation, and pain. And so if you feel pain, change what you're doing. But what I like to try and do is walk my hands back towards my knees, up my thighs, and just place them somewhere on my body, or bring them palms together at heart center. And just focus on noticing the bottoms of my feet at first. The first time I practiced this, I had no idea that yin posture was going to challenge me this much. I had no idea how I was going to stay sitting on my toes like this for 3 minutes. But then it became a practice that helped me really cultivate what it meant to inhale and fill my breath, filling up the spaces in my body that are experiencing sensation. And exhale and let them soften a little bit. And so that might be something you want to try. Or if that doesn't work for you and you need modifications in a different posture, feel free to leave your hands on the mat in front of you. Feel free to tuck something such as a blanket or a block between your seat and your heels if you need that. So see if you can focus on having your spine as upright as makes sense for you. Maybe rolling your shoulders to get yourself in this situation, in this posture. And just be with this, remaining as aware as you can, but also coming back to thinking about that question around self-awareness and what you've learned and where you can celebrate yourself as you move into tomorrow, the next 6 months, and the next year. If at any time you find yourself needing or wanting to change, you can also always add a wrist stretch into this, placing the palms of your hands on the mat and maybe moving your fingertips towards your body and leaning back. Sometimes having dual sensations in our body of 2 stretches simultaneously can help us in yin practice to stay with our breath and stay with our body. Got about 3 more breaths here in this pose. See if you can let something soften on your exhale, expand on your inhale. And when you're ready, if your hands aren't already placed on the mat in front of you, just lean forward enough to place them back down, walk them out a little bit, and then slowly lift your hips up so that your heels can feel free again. Lifting up 1 foot at a time, slowly and gently, placing the tops of your feet on the mat, and then maybe doing a little bit of a pitter-patter, that blood flow going back through your feet. And then we're just going to move right into saddle pose. If you need a transition of cat-cow, please feel free to take it. But to move into saddle pose, we'll widen our knees again, similar to how we were in tabletop, and then just sit our seat between our heels. And so your knees are tucked underneath you. You're sitting between your heels. If you would like to use a bolster in this, that can be really great for your spine. And so if you have a bolster or something you'd like to use, go ahead and place that behind you at the base of your spine. And then this pose is an extensive opener of the front side of our legs. And so if you know that your knees need something different, you might want to do this 1 leg at a time. I'll guide us into it with 2 legs, but if you want to do this 1 leg at a time right now, just go ahead and shift so that 1 leg is straight out in front of you on your mat. And I'll let you know when we're halfway through and you can switch to the other one. But to do this with both legs bent, what you'll do is just place your hands on either side of your hips, or either side of your heels rather, and just walk your upper body slowly back over something behind you if you'd like to have a bolster or a cushion or a rolled up blanket. And then come down onto your elbows and your forearms, beginning to pay attention to how this feels in your lower back. Maybe you thought you needed something under yourself and you'd like to change that, or vice versa. And get yourself to the point where you can rest your whole back body either down on the mat or on a prop. And just notice this extensive opening across the front side of our body. We're essentially in the opposite position from child's pose, which can allow you just to notice different things. You'll notice that your heart is open towards the ceiling and the sky. Your hip flexors are open rather than compressed. And with your arms, you can either have them down at your side, up above your head, or if you have room and it feels good, you can drape them out to the side. And feel a full expansion and opening across your chest and your shoulders and your collarbones. But see if you can take an inhale breath and fill yourself up as much as you can. Inhaling in through your nose to fill up your chest, lungs and collarbone, belly. And then exhale, see if you can let something soften. Change your arm position if you'd like to. And just settle into your version of saddle pose. Being aware of the duality between child's pose and saddle, between the fronts and the back sides of our bodies, and between our inhales and our exhales. And if you've taken this as a one-legged saddle pose, go ahead and use your next breath to press your elbows into the mat and come up and switch which leg is bent and which leg is straight. Wherever you are, go ahead and place your arms back down at your sides. Feel your elbows on the ground. And begin to press your elbows into the mat. Tuck your chin into your chest and slowly walk yourself up so that you're back on your palms, bringing your upper body back upright. Walking yourself back up so that your spine is upright. And just scoot your seat to one side and bring your legs around so that you're sitting in just a comfortable seat. You can sit cross-legged if you'd like. And just spend 3 breaths here noticing what your body feels like so far in relation to how it felt a little bit ago. Noticing any areas of tension or stretching. And then we're going to come into butterfly forward fold. And so getting into this position from a cross-legged position, you'll just bring the soles of your feet together in front of you. They can be as close or as far away from your body as feels comfortable for you. You might want to have something underneath your seat if you'd like to have your hips raised a little bit. But go ahead and just bring your soles of your feet together. I like to grab onto my ankles and just kind of flap my butterfly wings a little bit at first, just to have some fun in the middle of a class and just wake up my hips in a different way. And then decide if you'd like to have your feet any closer or farther away. Grip onto your ankles. Take an inhale breath, and we'll do somewhat of a little bit of a cat-cow breath here, just to feel our spine in this position. So take an inhale breath and see if you can puff your chest up. Look your head up towards the ceiling, dropping it back behind you. Noticing how your chest opens. And then on an exhale breath, go ahead and just round your spine, drop your chin to your chest, and maybe go with your upper back backwards a little bit. Go through this twice more on your own. Inhaling, bringing your chest forward through, looking up towards the sky, and exhaling, chin to chest, upper back towards the back of your mat. And once you've completed that, you can grip onto your ankles, grip onto your feet, or just place your hands on the mat next to your feet. We'll just take an inhale breath, and then on our exhale, we'll just fold our upper body forward over the midline of our body, coming down as far as you would like. No need to keep a flat spine here. You're welcome to round. And then you can curl in your chin towards your chest, keeping your eyes open or closing them, coming back to that internal space, maybe similar to how you were in child's pose. Coming back to that idea that similar to how camels can search inside, even when they're in the middle of the desert, for just a sip of water, a sip of nourishment, how can these inward focused poses help you return to finding some nourishment from yourself through your breath and through this time? Summertime can often be a time where we're feeling very outward focused. And it's important to make sure that even in the seasons in which we are excited to spend time outdoors or spend time with people or spend time doing outwardly focused things, that we make sure our inner landscape is being nourished as well. Sometimes that can be with other people through those activities, but sometimes it's not able to be nourished in that way. So paying attention, being aware, noticing where you're dehydrated, literally and figuratively, and making sure to refill. Coming back to your breath, if you ever lose track or find yourself sidetracked, noticing how an inhale might expand your upper back here, and an exhale might allow your upper body to drape a little bit closer to the ground. Maybe bringing your heart a little bit closer to your toes, feeling that sensation across your outer hips, inner groin, inner thighs, or wherever it feels sensational in your body. And taking 3 more breaths here in this posture. And once you've finished with those, place your hands palms back down. Similar to how we've done in other poses, just use your hands to walk yourself back up. Coming upright again, maybe gripping onto your feet or your ankles and fluttering your butterfly wings again, or just coming into a comfortable seat momentarily. The next posture we're going to move into is going to be thread the needle. And this is a posture that will really open up our shoulders and really allow us some heart sensation, as well as stretching out an area of our body in a creative way. And to get there, we're going to flow through downward dog momentarily. And so go ahead and come back to a tabletop position. Knees underneath your hips, hands underneath your shoulders. And we're actually going to do pigeon pose before we do thread the needle. We're going to change it up a little bit from the plan. So from this tabletop position, tuck your toes underneath. Don't worry, we're not coming back into toes pose. And lift up your knees and bring your hips up towards the sky, coming into downward dog, forming a triangle with your body against the ground. Walking out your dog a little bit if you need to, bending one knee at a time. Raising your hips up to the ceiling and the sky a little bit more. Lifting up onto your toes. Exhale, maybe sinking down into your ankles. Using this as a transitional pose in an opposite position than we've been in, and maybe than you've been in all day. Take an inhale breath again here, stretching out your spine a little bit more. Take an exhale, maybe you open up your mouth, stretch your tongue out, do a lion's breath. And then look up towards your hands, making sure that they are gripping into the mat, shoulders width distance apart. We're going to come into pigeon pose via three-legged dog with scorpion as an option. And so from downward dog, we'll lift up, take an inhale breath and lift up our right leg first to the sky into a three-legged dog. If you'd like to come into scorpion, you can bend your right knee, open up that hip towards the sky. Feel what that feels like. Notice how long you'd like to stay here. And then on an exhale breath, we're just going to sweep our right leg all the way through, coming with our knee towards our right wrist, setting it down, setting down our back left knee. You can keep your toe tucked if you'd like. And then coming into pigeon pose on this side with our right leg forward. You can have your left ankle as close to your left wrist as feels comfortable. Don't worry about trying to get your shin parallel to the top of your mat as the goal. In yin practice, the goal is just riding the wave of sensation. We're not looking for any type of perfection. The perfection is you taking the time to practice and move through. And so pigeon pose can need a couple different modifications. You might want to add something under your hips on your right side to boost yourself up. You might want to keep your toe tucked if that's comfortable for your left knee. But wherever you are, sitting in this upright pigeon position, you can inhale and look up towards the ceiling again, opening up the front of your throat. And then on an exhale breath, we're just going to come down into what some teachers call sleeping swan, where we just come down onto our forearms. Maybe you want to bring your chest close to the mat. Maybe your chest can reach the mat. But just come down and notice what this feels like to drape yourself over your hip while stretching out part of your body, compressing part of your body, and being in this really both vulnerable and introspective position. Returning to your breath, seeing what an inhale feels like, which parts of your body expand, and noticing on an exhale which parts of your body can soften a little more. Just being aware, sitting with it, and using your breath to explore. I think of pigeon sometimes as a thread the needle for our hips in a really unique way. And so we'll stretch and compress and open our hip joints, which can sometimes feel like the center line of our body. And then after this, we'll move into thread the needle to open up our shoulders and our heart a little bit more. If you practice while keeping the chakra system in mind, shifting between pigeon and thread the needle can often allow us to pay special attention to our sacral and our root chakra, as well as our heart and our solar plexus chakras, which are all interconnected in the ways in which we show up in the world, the ways in which we feel seen, feel afraid of being seen, and feel a sense of stability even amidst the waves of life's everyday opportunities. On your next breath, go ahead and come from your forearms back up to the palms of your hand, planting them on the mat in front of you, shoulder width distance apart. Tuck your back left toe under. Begin to press into the mat, lifting up your body, lifting up your right leg, coming back through, unthreading it, coming back maybe into scorpion if you'd like that, opening up that hip joint, back to three-legged dog. And then in your own time, setting your foot back down on the mat in downward facing dog. Walking out your dog this time, noticing anything that's different. Noticing anything that feels more open after pigeon pose on the right side. And then we'll flow right into pigeon with our left leg. So planting your hands, planting your feet. Inhale, lift your left leg up to the sky. If you'd like scorpion, you can bend that knee, open up that hip. Notice anywhere else in your body, such as the inner right thigh, that you feel this. And then on an exhale breath, sweep your left leg through, underneath, planting that knee by your left wrist. Ankle on the same plane as the right wrist, but not necessarily needing to be any more close to it than it wants to be. Right leg on the mat, keeping that toe tucked if you'd like. Using an inhale breath to open up through your throat, look up towards the sky. And then on an exhale, coming down onto forearms, bringing your chest and your heart closer to the mat. Always remembering in these two-sided poses that if you have a very different experience on one side than the other, it's not a problem. It's just the way that your body is in this moment and this time. We don't do life in symmetrical ways as much as we like to think we do. And so never guilt or shame yourself if your body has a very different experience on one side than the other. You may want to notice that difference and wonder if you'd like to create more balance and create a more similar experience, what you can do. But it's not a problem. If you drive, one side of your body might get used more than the other, depending on what side is your dominant side as you walk or run. One side will get used differently. We're focusing again on just awareness, using this time as a pilgrimage and a return to yourself, and just cultivating that deep sense of love and rest and release through our breath. Filling ourselves up as we inhale, letting things go and soften as we exhale. On this side, asking yourself, where do you feel this when you inhale? Do you feel your upper back expanding? Do you feel your right leg lengthening? Maybe somewhere else. And then as you exhale, can you allow your chest to sink a little bit closer to the mat? Allow your heart to melt a little bit farther. Or maybe it's just allow your head to dangle and your neck to release if you've been holding it up. Using your next breath to cultivate imagining yourself coming back out of this posture. And then when you're ready, go ahead and put your hands back on the mat, shoulder width distance apart, tuck your back left or back right toe underneath, press into the mat, lift that left leg back up, unthreading it from your pigeon pose, bringing it back to scorpion and or three-legged dog, keeping it there as long as you like. And then using an exhale breath to set it back down on the mat.
next to your right foot. Pedaling out your feet here, noticing if things feel different, more even, more stretched out, more expanded. And then on an exhale breath, coming back down into tabletop, taking your knees back to the mat.
Back underneath your shoulder. And now we're going to come and thread the needle. And for this posture, I want you to choose which side you thread through first. I'm going to be threading my right arm underneath my left first. But if you feel drawn to do this with your left arm first, feel free to do it that way. And so from this position in tabletop, planting one palm on the mat, with an inhale breath, lifting up the other arm, I'll be lifting up my right arm and opening it up to the ceiling, looking up towards the sky, opening up your arm wide, stretching out your chest. And then on an exhale breath, sweeping it underneath your opposite arm so that the side of your face, my right side of my face, is on the mat, my right arm is threaded through, and allowing yourself to sink down, stretching out that shoulder. And with the palm that's planted on the mat, you can leave it planted right next to your face, or maybe you'd like to reach it out in front of you, similar to downward dog or child's pose arm, or do something different with it. And you're welcome to keep your hips high, or if you'd like to sink them back towards your heels and come into a thread the needle child's pose variation, that's an option as well. But wherever you are, use your next breath or so to make any adjustments that you need and settle into this thread the needle posture. Feeling a similar sense of opening and compression simultaneously, noticing where a deep breath goes and where it feels constricted from, but asking yourself if you can use your exhale to maybe open up a little bit more of that constriction. Maybe open up your shoulder a little bit more. Maybe simply focus on opening up your mind. Where are you dehydrated right now, and how can you use your breath to rehydrate yourself? If you had your arms stretched out in a different way or wrapped around you, go ahead and bring that palm back in front of your face. Press into the mat, and on an inhale, just unwind and unthread that arm that's underneath you. Sweeping it back through, sweeping it up to the sky. And then on an exhale, sit it back down in that tabletop position. Flow through a cat-cow if you would like to. Sit back on your heels if you would like to. Just take whatever you need for a breath or two. And then we'll come into this on the opposite side. When you're ready, planting that opposite palm. So for me this time it's planting my right palm. And on an inhale breath, I'll sweep my left arm up to the sky, opening up my left arm, noticing that the left side for me feels really different. So again, not judging, just noticing. And then on an exhale, sweeping that arm underneath, bringing the left side of my face this time to the mat, stretching my right arm out, maybe into a child's pose-like position, or draping it around me. But settling in to thread the needle on this side, using inhales to see where I can expand, and exhales where can I soften. and then settling into my thread the needle posture. And if, as you think about the idea of a camel and the energy that the wild unknown spirit cards can bring, if you feel calm, collected, and content, how can you continue to return to a practice such as yoga, mindfulness, or meditation to cultivate that sense of calm? What can you fill up from in your time on the mat to carry with you so that in those times of stress or in those waves of life, you have kind of a surplus of calm that you can tap into? How can you use this time for that? If you had your arm placed in a different position, go ahead and bring your palm back near your face and begin to press into the mat. Sweep that left arm, or whichever arm you had threaded, back open up to the sky, opening up your chest one more time. And then exhale, bring your palm back down onto the mat. And from here, we're just going to flow through a couple more postures. And so use cat-cow to notice your spine. Get yourself reacclimated into both sides of your body moving at the same time. And we're going to come down onto our backs. And so we're going to move into fish pose. And so if you have blocks available for you, go ahead and grab them. If you don't and you have a blanket, go ahead and just roll that up so it makes a long tube. And coming into a seated position of your choice for a moment, we'll set these up behind us. And so I use two, and I start with them on the same height level, but you can change it as you need to. And so I'll place them behind me on my mat. One will be for your head, one will be for your heart area, right around your shoulder blades. And so to get into supported fish position, I like to bring my feet into butterfly legs. Some folks like to have their legs stretched out straight. Whatever works best for you, but go ahead and just sit up tall on your mat with those blocks behind you. And similar to how we did into saddle pose, but different leg position this time, place our hands on either side of us. Walk yourself and your upper body backwards. That first block should catch right underneath your shoulder blades on the opposite side from where your heart is. And the second block is there to catch your head. And so you might find that you'd like to lower these down farther or raise them higher. Each of them will provide very different sensations. Adjust as you need. We'll just be in this for a couple minutes because this can be quite a heart opener and quite a vulnerable pose, especially after we've been face down. But I like to encourage us to notice the opposites as we flow through things. And so take an inhale breath, adjusting anything that you need. If you had your legs in butterfly and you'd like to stretch them out straight, make that adjustment now. Decide where you'd like your arms to be. It can be, again, similar to saddle, down at your sides, up above you, out to your sides, or maybe you want to place one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart. Notice what your breath feels like in this posture, in supported fish. Notice an opening across your chest, a compression in your upper back where that block is. And take an exhale with an open mouth this time. See if you can inhale through your nose, exhale out your mouth, and sigh and let something drop and let yourself be a little bit more supported by these blocks. So inhaling, an open mouth exhale. And just let yourself melt down into your mat. If you find your mind wandering, come back to your breath, or you might want to try rolling your head from side to side on the prop underneath your head, massaging the back of your head, noticing what this stretch does for your neck. Maybe you want to linger on one side for a couple breaths, feeling the stretch across the back side of your neck or even the top of your shoulder. Make sure that if you linger on one side, you also linger for a few breaths on the other side. Although we aren't symmetrical, we do desire to cultivate a sense of balance where we can. And then come back to a neutral position. The next posture we'll move into will be one of our final, which will be a supine twist. And so in order to get here without moving too much, I like to bend my knees, place the soles of my feet on the mat, and then press my elbows into the mat, similar to how we got out of saddle pose. Just enough to lift up my head, press a little bit farther, lift up my back, so that I can move those blocks out from underneath me, off to the side of my mat, and then come back to lying flat on your back, keeping your knees up towards the ceiling for just a moment. Bring the soles of your feet to the outside edges of your mat and allow your knees to knock in together. And place your hands in somewhere meaningful on your body. And take 3 breaths here, just lying on your back, allowing your spine to be neutral, allowing yourself to rest before we move into our next position, and noticing what it's like to be lying face up. See if you can feel the inhale, expanding your belly and chest as they rise. And then on an exhale, letting your belly sink in, your chest sink in, and letting yourself melt. When you're ready, we're going to move into supine twist with the eagle legs. And so picking back up the soles of your feet, bringing them next to each other with your knees pointed up to the ceiling. Eagle legs is definitely an optional piece of this. You're welcome to just have your knees stacked. But if you'd like to try this twist with your legs crossed, we'll start with our left leg on the bottom. So inhale, lift up our right leg. You can either bring your ankle to your knee and kind of open up into a figure 4 position, or you can cross your leg over similar to how you might in an eagle position. And then press your left foot into the mat, lift up your hips and shift them a little bit over to the right side. And then use your next breaths, exhale, to drop your legs over to the left side of your mat. Trying to keep both of your shoulders on your mat. You might feel some pops and some stretches across your spine. That's okay. But seeing if you can drop your legs to the left side. Keep your shoulders on the mat. Keep your chest square up towards the ceiling. And see what the stretch feels like across your entire body. If you still have your hands planted on your mat or on your body, you might want to see what it's like to stretch out your right arm above your head, getting a full stretch along the right side of our body from our right pinky all the way down our right side, across our right hip, across our thigh. And if your leg is wrapped all the way around and down to your toes. Maybe as you inhale, you imagine yourself expanding and stretching a little bit more. And as you exhale, you twist a little bit more deeply. Alternatively, you can bring your hand out to the side and look over your right arm, stretching out the left side of your neck as well. But just enjoy this twist. I sometimes like to imagine twists as kind of wringing out anything else that I need to let go of at the end of a class, letting something else go, and letting it just be left here on the mat. No need to carry things that don't serve you into the next hour of your day. Then leave them here. Wherever you are, take 3 more breaths in this twist, adjusting your arm position or your neck if you'd like to for those 3 breaths, and then we'll prepare for the alternative side. On that final breath, if you have your legs crossed, go ahead and uncross them, leaving your knees stacked, dropped over to the left. And then on the next inhale, inhaling your knees back up to center, bringing your hands back onto your sides or onto your chest or belly. Spending a breath here in neutral, noticing what it feels like to be unwound. Before we move to the other side, maybe you'd like to sway your knees back and forth, adjusting your lower back, releasing anything that built up there. And then when you're ready, plant your right foot, lift up your left leg, either crossing your ankle over your knee or crossing your whole leg over your right. Pressing your right foot into the mat, shifting your hips a little bit to the left. And then using a breath on an exhale to drop your knees over to the right side. Noticing anything that you might need to adjust in order to be in this position for a few minutes. Deciding where you'd like your left arm to be. Maybe you want to place it up by your ear, up above your head, so you can feel that stretch across your left body, down your arm, down your side, across your chest, and down your hip. And maybe with that right arm, you'd like to place it on your body to encourage yourself to pay attention and be aware of the expansion of the inhales and the melting of the exhales. This will be our final posture together before Shavasana. So use this as a way to, like I mentioned, wring out anything that you don't need. Let anything go that you don't want to carry with you from this place, from this time on the mat. Let it go through your exhales. If you follow the cycles of a full moon or the moon in general, today is a full moon, which can be a time of focusing on the goals that we have and any external action we need to take or any external action that is being unfolded towards a goal that we have. I like to set goals on the new moon, notice where they're going on the full moon, and then spend the next couple weeks making any changes or adjustments I need before resetting at another new moon cycle. Some people like to set goals on the full moon and use the new moon as a time of reflection. Whatever resonates for you is what works best for you. But we all breathe, and so we can all use our inhales to refill and our exhales to let go. Coming deeper into the twist with each breath. Where can you rehydrate through your breath, through your body? And how can you use it to cultivate a sense of calm and contentment? On your next breath, if you have your legs crossed, go and uncross them, leaving them stacked momentarily. And then on your next inhale your knees back up to center, pressing your hips and feet into the mat to shift your hips back to neutral, taking any final movements that you need before Shavasana, any final postures, poses, things that you know that your body's asking for right now through your own self-awareness. And then in your own time, stretch out your legs out in front of you. Lie yourself fully and completely on your back, on your mat. Arms down to your side. If that's what's comfortable for you, or placing them on your body in any place that you feel drawn to. And we'll just spend these final 3 minutes before we come back to seated, soaking in everything of the last bit of time together. So no need to focus on anything specific, no need to do anything, no need to force anything. Just be here breathing and resting and soaking it in. I'll be quiet for the next few minutes, and then I'll guide us into a final breath together. So take what you need, rest, Shavasana. On your next breath, begin to come back to the space keeping your eyes closed. Maybe you begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes, maybe pointing and flexing your feet, the windshield vibrating your feet side to side, flexing your toes, waking yourself back up, preparing yourself to return to whatever's next for you. Take an inhale breath, and I invite you, if you feel comfortable, to bring your arms over your head and stretch your body as long as you possibly can, from your toes to your fingertips. And then on an exhale breath, bring your knees into your chest, wrap your hands around them, curl yourself into a tiny little ball, and then roll over to one side, resting for a breath in the fetal position, curled in, tucked back in, and then pressing yourself up into a seated position, whatever seat looks most comfortable for you. Keeping your eyes closed if you would like, bringing your hands to anywhere on your body that you would like. Maybe you'd like to rest your palms face down or face up on your knees, or bring your hands to heart center, pressing your palms together. We'll take one more breath together to just seal in this practice and this time that we both took for ourselves. Inhale. And then with an open mouth exhale, let your shoulders drop and let yourself sigh. Thank yourself for taking this time. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for cultivating this practice of returning to yourself through your breath, so that we can offer ourselves to the world as our most calm and content and hydrated selves. Have a great night.